So I'm just going to pop into a few of the different places in here to show you some stuff that I know you guys may not be too excited about, but it's nice to know it's there, especially when you're going to be expected to have these tools entered and entered correctly before you turn them into the utility, because not all utilities have the staffing to spend a lot of time looking at your calculator and getting it fixed. Some of these utilities have a person that wears 17 different hats, and these incentive programs are just one of the many hats they wear. So if you want to get projects approved by the utility, it is in your best interest to provide a lighting calculator tool that checks all the boxes and has everything in there so that they don't have to spend a bunch of time and emails going back and forth with you in order to get it corrected. So that's the main purpose of this little training here, is to show you the key things and key items that need to be in there and kind of talk about why. So that's what we're going over. I'm going to pop into a couple of these things like program requirements here. So this talks about the required items in the lighting calculator, and this isn't too big of a deal. It does have some formula information in here as well, as far as where the numbers come from, and talks about the fact that, you know, some of the baseline information, that kind of stuff that you can go into. This is more of a, if you're wondering why my incentive is only this much for that, or why I can't get incentive for this measure, you might want to pop in here to see. There might be some explanations in here. This is like the small print in a contract. I'm not going to take you through everything in there. I just want people to be aware it's there, because a lot of folks just don't think to go in there, because that's just not where you normally do your scoping information. And then this other drop down here, is click down to the next option. This shows a lot of where the calculations come from within the lighting calculator tool. And these calculations you don't see because they're just operating on the back end, but this shows where they come from and what they are, should you be interested in finding out where that information is. Minimal use on this for you guys, I would suspect, but I'm just making you aware of the fact that it's there. This is a little more useful tab right here, the program offerings. If you're working with a new utility and you want to see what incentives they offer for the various measures, you can go in here, and this will show the various measure groups, and this is showing the incentive at 100% pass-through, which you can't tell that by looking at it. I just know it is. But it shows the different incentives for what you're doing. So A1 measure group, your existing baseline is less than or equal to 100 watts. You're achieving a greater than or equal to 40% wattage reduction. You get $2 per lamp. And then this section right here gives you a brief description of the types of products that go into this measure group. And if you go down, you've got your LED tubes here. And this category is actually going to cover all your LED tubes. If you're changing from T8 to T8 LED tube, or T12 to T8 LED tubes, or 4-foot or 8-foot or 2-foot, they're all going to fall into these categories. A, B, or C types are all going to fall into there. This particular group is a big one that gets used a lot, because it's going to take care of many of your linear projects like strips, wraps, vapor tights, under cabinet fixtures, just your common type stuff. Proffers are going to be in this group. And as you can see, it shows for the instance right here in C1 40%, you have a baseline wattage less than or equal to 100 watts, and you're getting at least 40% wattage reduction, you get $20. So if you do that same fixture, but you add networked controls, then that incentive goes from $20 to $70 a fixture. So it gives you an additional $50 for adding the networked controls. Network controls are required to be listed under the Design Lights Consortium Qualified Products List, which is free to access. You do have to go on there and set up a username and password. But once you set that up, it's free to access, and it's pretty fast to set up that username and password to get onto the DLC website. Many distributors are at the point where they predominantly stock DLC listed products, just because they know that any utility program is going to accept products that are DLC listed almost without exception. I'm not going to say without exception, because there is an exception to every rule, I'm sure. But anyway, that's the product group here. This is the types of products that are included in there. It's very, very common one that you'll use quite a bit. You have notes on these that indicate specific circumstances that can come up. One that I had come up the other day was a gentleman had a dual 42-watt compact fluorescent recessed can commercial fixture, and he was entering it under this category because it says recessed cans kits, and that's where it's supposed to go initially. If you get pre-approval from your utility can approve you to put it in this category, and the reason where it's going to make sense for that is the incentive. If you're doing a cheap 6-inch retrofit product that less than $10, you're gonna get $2 a pop for those. But if you're in a commercial situation where you're having to put an expensive commercial retrofit kit product in there that is just a lot more expensive and a lot more involved, maybe it's replacing a 50, 70, 100 watt right there, then you can talk to your utility, get approval from them, and then you can potentially put it in here. They can also deny you, but it's available, so it's worth asking your utility for approval on that.
Hey, Nick.
Yes.
We have a question. Is network controls, photocells, daylight harvesting, etc.?
No. You've got standard controls, occupancy sensor, daylight harvesting, maybe even a dumb control that has occupancy sensor and daylight harvesting in the same control unit. You have to, for network controls, it has to be a DLC listed system. Okay. Then we get down to the exterior. This is going to be your wall packs, floods, barn lights, anything that's outside, basically. Flood, parking garage lighting, that kind of stuff. If you're doing HID screw-in replacements, often referred to as corn cobs, they're going to fall in the Measure Series F here. And obviously the incentive's a little bit different here because frequently a corn cob is maybe a less expensive retrofit product than actually a brand new fixture. It can be. Linear, this section is going to be for refrigerated case lighting and accent slash cove lighting. So that's going to be your situation where you're using like maybe a rope light style of product or a tape style of product like that in those types of applications. Then we've got exit signs. Don't ever walk past an exit sign that's got compact fluorescence or incandescence in it. $20 incentive for that exit sign is going to cover pretty much the cost of it, or a large portion of the cost of it. And I think labor-wise on an exit sign, they go up and down pretty fast. And then we do have incentives for signs as well. So that's a fairly underutilized incentive measure. If you're doing a sign, I've seen the incentive for those because the signs are frequently on at least 12 hours a day, 365 days a year. So it's based on kilowatt hour savings. And so it's not one to walk by. You can frequently see that sign, especially if it's got T12 technology in it, seeing an incentive that can be 20, 30, 40% of the project cost. So it's something to be thought about and looked at if you're willing to work on signs. Decommissioning, this is an incentive. If say you have 12 fixtures, you're going down to 10 because the new fixtures are more efficient or better at getting the light out in that space, more application appropriate. And then the incentive will go from a per unit one, like in this group or this group, where you're getting say 80 or 150 or whatever. It'll then become a calculated incentive based on 13 cents per kilowatt hour saved. Then there's non-standards. The 13 cents per kilowatt hour saved is for all the oddballs that don't really fit in there. Then we got controls incentives. Here's where your standard aux sensor, multifunction would be your combination daylight harvesting and occupancy. Basically what it comes down to is if your occupancy controls are controlling 1, 2, or 3 fixtures or 10 fixtures in one of these wattage ranges, that's what determines how much incentive you get. So if you've got a daylight harvesting and occupancy sensor controlling 4 20-watt fixtures, you're controlling 80 watts, you're going to get $40 incentive for that line item. New construction, and then Measure Series O LED tubes basically just says it's covered up there in Measure Series B. So if you go to a new utility and you want to see what their incentives are, you can go into this document, print it out, and then you've got a hard copy of it should you need it. Okay, so that's these items here. Then we go into project input. This is the meat and potatoes. This is probably what you really wanted me to talk about. Sorry about your luck so far, but we're going to get into this now. So this is where you fill this out, and it'll tell you, and you're going to tell the tool how it's going to calculate. If it's calculating as a retrofit tool, it's using existing lighting as your baseline of wattage consumption. If you're doing it as new construction, then this tool is going to assume that code, whatever current code is your baseline of wattage consumption. If we do this as new construction, say it's a newly constructed building, click next. Let's enter. This is the part that's going to be really boring for you guys, but like I said, I'm going to take you start to finish. So just typed it. I always try using a drop down, just because if you use the drop down, you know it's going to work. It's not going to cause issues for you later. Also, I want to point out that this lighting tool, this Excel document, when you're using this tool, do not have any other Excel documents open. You're just setting yourself up to lose data. Only have this lighting calculator open when you're working on projects, because with all the macros in it and stuff like that, it just, I've lost data before, and I don't want you guys to lose data. It's very frustrating when you work for hours entering line items, and you go to get out of it and you lose all your work. This category here, this building type, a lot of folks will try to enter other. BPA doesn't like to see other. They want it to fit into one of these categories in here as much as possible. I mean, there are some times where you may have to use other, but so you're talking about a plumber shop or an electrician shop, and it's like, well, it's not a warehouse. I mean, it is a warehouse, but they also do bids out of there and do some assembly and stuff for pre-assembly of parts and kits for projects and stuff. Let's call it a retail boutique or something like that, a retail, because it's retail electrical contractor. They sell their services to end users, but don't use the other category. It's just is going to raise questions for BPA. If the street address is the same as the project site address or customer address, then you can just click here. That matches up there. If you skip the estimated project cost, it's not going to calculate any of your payback information or anything like that. So I don't like to skip it because I want everything to calculate when I get done. So at the beginning of the project, I'll just plug in like a even number so that I know it's probably not the right number, but at least it's going to help the calculator go ahead and go through the process of calculating everything. And what I suggest you do, if you haven't done a lot of these lighting tools, I suggest you submit it to the utility for them to take a look at it before you go telling a customer that the incentive is going to be X amount, because potentially you could have stuff entered wrong, and the approval from the utility, you're doing two things. They're saying, yes, we have money for that project, or no, we don't. They're saying, yes, we've looked at the tool. It appears to be entered correctly. So you're covering your tail so that you're not potentially overestimating an incentive amount, or on the other hand, you could be underestimating an incentive amount and making the project look that much less attractive to the customer. So those services are kind of the services that my organization has provided in the past for the utilities. But we have this interim where starting on June 1st, so Monday, our contract will be up, and we're waiting for a new contract to come up for bid so that we can hopefully get that contracting in and provide that support. But that's why we're here today, is so you guys can get trained up. So anyway, I've got this basic data in here for the project. Going back to this is where the Trade Ally tab, This is where whoever's submitting the project should be putting their data in. If you're a distributor and you're doing the lighting tool and putting all this together to submit to the utility, but you've got a contractor that's doing the work, from my perspective, I want the distributor's contact information in here so that I can reach out to them and say, hey, what are you doing here? Why are you doing this? Or I need a part number for that or whatever. But I like to see the distributor contact information in here. If you're the contractor and you're submitting the project yourself, then put your information in here so we know who to get a hold of in order to get clarifying questions answered. This first tab, I should have been more clear on it. This is all customer information. This is end user information. And although this isn't yellow, I think all utilities want an email contact or whoever the point of contact is at the business at which the lighting project is occurring at. Because a lot of utilities will send out a contract or some type of notification that the utility intends on paying an incentive for that scope of work. Okay, so back here to Trade Ally, that's all your guys' information. If you are a Trade Ally Network Northwest member, you can indicate that here. It's not going to stop the application process either way. This is where we get into the scope of work. Now, if you remember at the beginning, we selected this as a new construction project. We see very few new construction projects come in, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. But should you have a new construction project that beats Washington State Energy Code by at least 20%, then it has a potential to get an incentive. What you'll need is in Washington or in Oregon, you can use the ComCheck. In Washington, they have a Washington State Energy Compliance Form, and they're very similar. The ComCheck and the form in Washington are very similar. Other states, there's a lot of states that use the ComCheck. I won't say it's the norm, but there's a lot of states that use it. But we have to have some type of document that shows the lighting power allowance based on energy code that's applicable to that area and showing the square footage and what's going in and that type of information and showing what's allowed and what the proposed system is going to put in as far as the wattage amount. We enter that data in here and then it will calculate an incentive. And as you can see, it does ask for primary heating type and primary cooling type, that type of information as well. We don't see a lot of new construction stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and click home. I'm going to go back into project input. I'm going to change this to a no because we're doing a retrofit project. That's what we see 99% of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and go at it from that direction now. This data all looks the same. And this is a tab that you will have now that you didn't really have before when we were in the new construction section. So this is where you're going to enter your various spaces that are within the facility that you're looking at doing an audit on. So I'm just going to kind of make some stuff up. If somebody wants to pipe up with some suggestions, I'm open to them, but I'm going to go, let's see here. Let's go like 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, 0 hours on Saturday. They're open all year long for 2 weeks out of the year. This particular place has natural gas heat and then air conditioning. And what are we doing in this space? Let's say that we've got a office, open office area, and it's on this schedule. So we're going to go ahead and click on use primary operating schedule because this is the schedule that you enter. That's the predominant schedule that you're going to use in most places throughout the facility. And because you can just use this little box right here to just go, okay, well, we're just going to click that, and it's going to automatically run with this schedule. Now, there's more than one schedule in any building. There's more than one, and we're not talking like the hours of operation for the building. We're talking the hours that the lighting are on, and that's a thing that people get confused on or they just don't put any more effort in. They'll walk into a business and say, what are your hours of operation? Well, we're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Well, that's fine. That's when you're open. But does your business have a cleaning crew that comes in every night of the week and spends an hour there at the end of the day, and they got all the lights on, and they're cleaning the office up or cleaning up whatever you got going in there. If it's a grocery store, they may frequently will have a night crew that comes in at night and they restock the shelves. I did a lot of that during high school and college. So you got to ask more in-depth questions to get the hours of operation. So if you need to add more spaces, what you'll do is you go here and it says add new row below the current one or add new row above the current one. So we're currently on line 2, which is indicated over here. Let's add one below it. Okay, let's say there's a restroom in here. Most places have a restroom, right? And this restroom has multiple stalls in it. It's public access and employee use, so it's on the same hours as the retail space. So we're just going to go ahead and click on these two to indicate that it's on the same hours as the retail space. So let's say that the manager's office has a restroom that's a private restroom, or say the employees have a restroom that's a private restroom. It's not on the same hours of operation. It's a single stall with a switch on the wall, and folks go in and out of it. They turn the light switch off. You then enter restroom, and then I enter this here because it helps me differentiate later on when I go use the space type, so that I know that, hey, this is not the same restroom. This has lower hours. And a lot of times, what I'll do is for a restroom that's in a private space like that, I'll usually take about half the usage of the space that's around it. So I'm just going to go 5 hours a day. And in this situation, this restroom is heated and cooled the same way the rest of the space is. Also at this space, there's a warehouse, a standalone warehouse that has separate hours and has separate, they do some work out there too during oddball hours. So let's go ahead and add that space, warehouse. And they actually spend a lot of time. They have trucks come in on Sundays, so spend 5 hours in there on Sunday, and then Mondays, Monday through Friday, they have longer days because they're assembling stuff, whatever they're doing. But they've got different hours out there. They have electric resistance heat out there and no cooling. So you have to kind of set up your spaces depending on what you have at this particular location. So that's where we get our spaces put in at. So we're going to use those when we go to the Measures tab here and start entering our scope of work. So we entered all those spaces. Now what we do when we go to enter our scope of work is we start here at the top and start working through the spaces and the scope that we're going to do. So let's say we walk into the building, into the open office, and in there, let's say there's 4 T12, 4-foot magnetic ballast. Now I go with magnetic ballast most of the time in a 4-foot T12 because that's probably the most common ballast in existing 4-foot T12 lamps out there and fixtures. There are, of course, some electronic ones out there, but for a T12, most of them are going to be magnetic. That's going to be the lion's share for a 4-foot. Then you've got a couple wattages. This is like the Super Saver 4-foot T12 lamp. This is the full wattage 4-foot T12 lamp. And these are 4 lamp fixtures. So what we're going to go back with is we're going to go back with 4. We're going to do some LED flat panels. That's going to fall under the general indoor-outdoor quality or category, excuse me. And we're not going to do any network controls. We're just going to do standard fixture with no controls on it for now. And we're looking at doing about a 30-watt 2x4 trough or flat panel. Now, if you did decide to put an aux sensor in that room, 1 aux sensor. If you do a multifunction where it's got aux sensor and daylight harvesting, then you can go with whatever category most appropriately fits here. Say you've got it set up so that the daylight harvesting, dims the lights in there, and then you got aux sensor. Then we'd be looking at probably about half the time the lights are going to be seeing a reduction in power consumption. So the other pieces of data that are needed at this point, myself, I like to put any descriptions down here of the space that help identify where the space is at, or just so that somebody else walking in with this lighting calculator can go, oh, well, this is room for second floor office space, whatever it is. So also you need to have the manufacturer and exact part number in here on each line. And the reason for that is if you send this in to the utility and say, hey, can you review this and make sure I've got it entered right? And you don't provide a manufacturer and a part number, but you have this populated and this populated, how are they going to know if you have it populated right? They don't know. Maybe you're doing tubes, but you selected this because you didn't know how to do the lighting calculator tool. So we need a manufacturer and part number so we can look at it and do a couple different things. We're going to look up the fixture and verify the wattage. If it's a multi-wattage fixture, we're going to ask what wattage you plan on setting this at. If it's we're going to look and see what the performance is of it. If it's got super bad performance, they might say, you know what, can you find something that works a little bit better, has a little better lumens per watt? And then so those are some of the things we're going to check out. If it's advanced network lighting control, so the DLC listed control system, then we need a part number for that down here as well. If you're just using a dumb occupancy sensor like a wall box Leviton aux sensor, or a ceiling mount aux sensor, or fixture mount aux sensor, we don't necessarily need a part number for that. But if you're ordering a fixture with the aux sensor on it, it's got the part number on it, that's beneficial because then we can tell that you actually do have a sensor going in there. If you have it checked here, but you don't have anything indicating down here aux sensor, to me, I'm going to go, okay, you've got it checked that there's an aux sensor here, but I don't, I just want to make sure you got that covered in your bill of material. A best practice that I always recommend is if you have a multi-wattage fixture, then what I always suggest you do is start out with the lowest wattage setting when you install that fixture. Because if you start out with the lowest setting and the customer says, I was really kind of hoping it'd be a little bit brighter in here, or they're absolutely irate and they're like, oh, well, this isn't going to work. This is not bright enough for what we do in here. If you started out with the highest setting, you have absolutely no place to go, and other than changing fixtures out, which is not what we want to be doing. We want to do it once, not twice. So I always recommend going with the lowest wattage setting when you do your initial install, and see if that's going to meet the needs for the applications in those spaces. You can choose the wattage based on what you actually program it at. So say this fixture is available in 25, 30, and 34 or something like that. And if there's no 25, so we're going to go with 26 because that's closest and rounding up. You're going to get $400. If we end up with the 34 watt, in this case, you're still going to get $400. But depending on where that wattage is, as far as within that range, you could potentially get more incentive just by changing the wattage of the fixture. And the one thing you're always going to get if you go with the lower setting is more energy savings, which is calculated right here. So we've got 2015 savings right there. If we change it to the 34, it goes down to 1931. You can see how those changes impact the overall savings on the project. The bigger you can make this number, and this is measure level, so this is just this particular space, the bigger you can make that number, the bigger it's going to make the total kilowatt hour savings, and it's going to help with the payback on the project. Not every place are you going to put network controls. We definitely encourage it. That's why we offer the higher incentive. So yeah, definitely try to use them wherever you can because you get more money for it. It does a couple things. It gets you more incentive, and network controls actually assumes that you're going to have the lights off more. So A standard control is going to assume that the lights are going to be off 25% of the time. So whatever schedule you got your fixtures on, when you add a control to it, like an aux sensor or daylight harvesting, it's going to reduce your hours by 25%. So if you then go ahead and go with advanced network controls, I believe it bumps it to 40%. So that increases your incentive. It also increases the energy savings, which helps with the overall payback on the project. So that's that line item. If we need to add line items, we just click here. Oh, and you know what? We had a question before we even started about how to make the tools faster. We talked about it before we even started, so I'm going to go back to that and touch on it real quick. And spaces right here. If you have a large project, see down here in the corner down here, if you click on large project, that'll deactivate some of the calculations that go on behind the scenes every time you add a line or change anything in your lighting calculator tool. So if you have a large, once you get over like 100 line items, this tool tends to like to get really slow and lethargic. So a couple things that I would suggest is once you get to 100 line items that start to get real slow, I would recommend entering it in phases. So maybe enter your lighting calculator tool by floors or buildings or something like that so that you're not putting all 1,000 line items into one lighting calculator tool. The utility's going to understand, if you bring 4 lighting tools that cover this entire scope, and each one's got 100 line items, they're going to understand, they're going to get it. They may not necessarily like having to submit 4 projects, but I think that they're probably going to be okay with it just because it's just a lot easier to get all the data into the tool. Okay, so I'm going to add a few lines here. So I got a few on there for us to work with. And right now it's saying I'm on line 2. I want to go back to line, all right, I'm on line 2 now. There you go. So let's enter another space, another fixture type. Let's enter an exterior fixture. So this is where knowing your legacy lighting is helpful. If you don't know what a HID is, that's a high intensity discharge light fixture. It's going to include high pressure sodium, metal halide, or mercury vapor. High pressure sodium is going to be that kind of orangish yellow looking light that you see on a lot of exterior fixtures, especially the schools and stuff like that have some of the old lighting on it. Metal halide is going to be more of a white light, and mercury vapor is too, but mercury vapor as it ages really color shifts to more almost kind of a blue light to it. And it also, all of these light sources have pretty substantial lumen depreciation, so the output of the light as they get older definitely goes down. At half-life, they're usually at about 60% of what the initial output was, so their lumen maintenance is not good. High pressure sodium typically outside, same with metal halide mercury vapor, but you will see some metal halide mercury vapor inside, not as much as there used to be. That's legacy lighting. The more you know about it, the easier it is to fill these tools out. They're all typically magnetic ballast. Let's say we got a 400 on lamp per fixture. I go back with an LED product. Let's say we're going to do an HID screw-in replacement lamp. And then this is where you enter your fixture type. What do we got out there? We've got a wall pack. It's a yard or a barn light. What is it? So we're going to go with a wall pack on this one. And replacing a 400 watt, what are we going to do? About a 95 watt or so, guys and gals. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, so what we've done there is we put in a HID screw replacement. It's not calculating an incentive for us yet, though, because we didn't do anything with controls. We got to make the yellow go away. Okay, so We have no controls on this. We are looking at the F4 category group, F4 40% reduction, one fixture, $80 a fixture. Okay, so what do we do about exit signs? Well, exit signs are on 24/7, right? They're always on. So we don't have anything in here that says 24/7. So we're going to go click back on spaces. We're going to go back to spaces. And we got to add a space because we got to get our exits covered in here. So space type. We've got exits. They could be in any of these spaces. Typically what I'll do is I'll just pick the most common space, like say it's open office or something, and I will then enter. Okay, now we can enter the offices. They're 24/7, and we've got with this heating and cooling type. So we'll go back to measures. Okay, I'm going to go a couple lines in here to get to where I can enter some exits. Open office exits. We've got 2 exit signs in there. They are compact fluorescent, CFL. They are a hardwired in this situation, I'm saying. They're usually lower wattage. I'm going to say like 7 or 9 watts. Pretty common. Pretty common to have 2 of them per fixture. And we're going to go back with 2 exit signs. And they're going to be LED. And it's going to be a new fixture retrofit kit. These are the wattage options that are available for you. A lot of exit signs, unless you've got some egress heads on them, are going to be 1.5 or 3 watt. And we're not going to put any controls on the exit sign. And this is where you put your manufacturer. And exit signs, you just throw in your manufacturer and part number. I mean, we'll look them up to verify the wattage, but I don't think you're going to see an exit sign rejected for any reason. I don't think there's just not a lot of scrutiny on them because there's a low wattage consumption measure. So that's how you get the exits in there. Let's look at another measure. So let's say we got a 7 T8 fixtures. They're 4-foot T8s, normal light output, 32 watts. Say 3 lamps per fixture. And we're going to go back. We're going to still do 7 fixtures. They're going to be LED. And we're going to do tubes in those fixtures. And we're going to go with ballast type A, ballast compatible, or type A is ballast compatible, so that'll run off of fluorescent ballast. Type B is line voltage. Type C is external driver. Type B has been pretty popular. That's kind of the one I see the most of, so I'm going to go with type B, which are line voltage. And let's say we go with, say, a 12 watt. And because they're so much more efficient, we're able to just put 2 lamps in. And because in a 3 lamp fixture, you've got 2 on the outside and 1 in the middle. If you just do 2 on the outside, then it doesn't look too wonky. A 4 lamp fixture, if you did 3 in it, it looks kind of wonky. And maybe it doesn't look wonky to anybody but us lighting geeks. But it looks wonky to me when I see a 4 lamp fixture with 3 lamps in it. So if I'm going to de-lamp a 4 lamp fixture, I'll tend to want to bump the wattage up on the LED replacement depending on what's needed. I mean, if it's overlit already with the existing, say, 4 lamp T12, and you can go with a 2 lamp T8 LED tube, then go for it. But you might need to do a mock-up to make sure it's going to meet the application needs. So as you can see, it's still not calculating an incentive. It's because we have yellow on the screen. Yellow is your enemy on these screens. We want it to go away. So we got 14 tubes, 7 times 2 for 14 at $8 per tube for $112 for that measure. If you're going to go 3 tubes, you get more incentive, but your savings go down. See our savings at $853, and take it back to 2, $1,048. So yes, you get more incentive, but you also have to charge a customer for more material and more labor to do all those tubes in there, and you're not getting as much energy savings, so you're not getting as much projected savings. Now, there's some distributor folks in here I know that are like, oh, that's okay. We want to sell more lamps because we sell lamps and that's how we make money. And I get it. But at the same time, if you can keep the project cost lower and the estimated savings on an annual basis higher, it helps the overall payback on the project. So here's the project reports. There's a couple reports here. Here's the first one, the customer proposal. So this shows all the data that we put in. Right now it's showing a 12.2 year payback, which is kind of long, not very attractive, but also note that I plugged the cost, so the cost is not accurate. But this is a good place to look to see if the project is looking appropriate based on the data that's been populated in it. The other thing you can look at down here is the incentive value that's actually calculated at the bottom here. So I'm going to go back and adjust the cost up so that it pushes the payback out, and we're going to see how that impacts the project here. So let's say we've got a contractor that is from out of state and they're trying to get rich on this project. They say, well, this is a $150,000 project. So as you can see, now that's saying the estimated utility incentive is 0, and our payback's out there at 22.6 year, and that's because the benefit cost ratio is too low. So they've basically said, hey, this is too expensive for the amount of energy savings we're getting, so we're not going to pay an incentive on it. So it's always good to check it out here, and the other place you can see that is on this guy here. It will show you an estimated incentive here of 0 because the cost was too high. The benefit to the cost ratio is not good on the project. It costs too much to be justified. So I'm going to go back and adjust the cost again. I'm going to adjust it way down because we forgot to include all of our costs. And what you'll see is the estimated incentive is now at $350. And a better place to see it is on this other report. You can see that it's capping at the 70% of project cost. So the project cost is $500. 70% of $500 is $350. So that can be a little alarm that maybe you don't have all your cost entered. It's just kind of like a place to check to make sure you've got your data entered appropriately. So if you don't have all the cost in there, this could happen. Or maybe the cost is so inexpensive, maybe you don't have the labor included or something like that. So these are just some places you can look to kind of double check that you've got all this information in there appropriately. I like to see these documents when you get them all dialed in, go with your proposal to the customer so the customer can see your scope of work, first of all, because this project summary shows that in this open office and second floor office space, this is what we're doing. And if your customer does his due diligence and looks through it, then they're knowing what they can expect to get done within your bid, within your project. The other document, I like it to go to the customer as well. You can do whatever you want, but I think it's just a good thing to show it to them. It helps them look at the numbers on the project. And some people look at this, and this will be what helps you sell the project because they'll go, oh, look at this cost of waiting. The longer I wait, this is how much money I'm potentially missing out on in energy savings. I know some utilities have forms that they require be filled out prior to the project being approved and paid by the utility. Some utilities will require pre-approval in order for the project to qualify for an incentive. Some utilities are a little more willing to go in after the fact and help get an incentive. So it's key to talk to your utility at your serving utility before you do the project and make sure that you're going about it and getting them the paperwork that they need. So those are the main things I kind of wanted to hit on today. Here's where you can do your saving, do your save or save as. Obviously, the first time you save this document, you're going to do a save as and save it as whatever you want to call it, wherever you want to put it. Then once you've got it saved under that specific name, then you can just do the save function. You can use this to clear the data on this form if you want to use this form for a new project. There are links available here at this link site, get you to the Design Lights Consortium and some of the other sites, or you can look up product information on fixtures and listings and that type of information.